I'm Sherilyn Muckleroy, and this is Romantic Romps. Welcome, everyone, to the podcast of Romantic Romps, where guests share their stories of love and how it changed their lives. The Life of Riley, Chapter 4. Coral Stevens was as nice could be. She didn't even mention how unkempt I looked, but then again, she didn't know about my experience with the transport of terror. Before showing me around, she settled Beau once more in her office, where he resumed play with characters from his early American frontier box set. He had placed plastic cowboys around her typewriter. Indians stood in a line atop a stack of colorful pieces of construction paper. He stuffed covered wagons under a beautiful linen handkerchief held down on one side by a telephone directory. I know an expensive handkerchief when I see it. Why she allowed her son to play with such an exquisite piece of cloth was beyond me. Watching him arrange his toys, Coral explained the reason her son was there. My nanny fell ill, and with no alternatives, I had to bring Beau with me. It doesn't bother me, I offered. He's a breath of fresh air. After leaving Beau alone to start the active performance between the assortment of vinyl pieces, Coral closed the door. Time for my tour of the agency. Taking in the office layout, I found it extraordinary. Most often, in an open concept like this, desks lay in rows with barely enough space to walk between them. Work-related machines covered those desks, leaving no room for the occupants' personal items. However, this floor plan fell completely outside that norm. Here, an employee's desk, file cabinets, typewriter stand, large potted plants, outlined a generous square. Having so much surface space on their desks, there was plenty of room for personal photos, etc. Privacy came in the way of several tall, individual mobile screens mounted on metal legs scattered around the floor. Soundproofing, perhaps? Coral, who thought up such a unique concept as this? I wish I could claim the credit, but I stole the design when living abroad for a few years. I visited several upscale companies and found this configuration to be quite efficient. She swept her hand across the area. This is a duplication of that strategy where my administrators are among the client assistants. This unites the staff. She then told me something interesting about herself. The longer you work here, Riley, you will discover I have an unconventional thought process, especially concerning the mental and, she tilted her head and winked, physical parts of my life. What did that mean? I didn't feel comfortable asking for clarification. After introducing me to the staff, whom I considered friendly upon first impression, Coral led me back to her office. Once there, we sat at a round table away from Beau's play area. Riley, Coral began, I hope this is not too much for you, but since I had to let our receptionist go, you will assume her responsibilities in addition to your office manager duties. I apologize for doing this to you at the last minute, but like my situation with Beau, I had no other choice. Efficient was my middle name, so what was one more task added to my job description? Not an issue, Coral, I crowed. I am happy to do both. I am so glad you're here, Riley. You will be a tremendous asset to our working family. And, she amusingly stressed, in the future, I promise to keep Beau on this side of the door. Please let me know if you have any questions. I hesitated. Not to be a fuss budget, Coral, but is there any chance the maintenance crew could repair the garage elevator? She raised her brows. Why would you ask that? After recounting my dreadful experience, I received a not-so-amused look from her. "Riley," she stated with a puzzled expression, "that elevator hasn't worked properly for years. That's why everyone parks on the first level. What possessed you to park up there?" "Because that's the space the receptionist issued when she called me yesterday." Coral pressed her lips in aggravation. "That, my dear, is a big reason not to hire a family member. I don't care if she is my sister-in-law. Gertrude was a menace from the day I hired her as a favor to my brother. She was rude to client and employee alike, and even to you, Riley. I do apologize." Coral opened her lap drawer and withdrew a notepad. "Here." She wrote a note addressed to the security unit. "Give this to the secretary in the main lobby. She'll notify security, who will assign you a valid parking space on the first floor. I can't imagine the inconvenience you went through because of that woman, Riley. Your first order of business is to submit a reimbursement request for the damage to your belongings." "Oh, that's not necessary," I urged, but didn't put much push behind it. Those items were not cheap. "Not up for discussion," she insisted. "I will not have my new office manager walking around with a crimped briefcase, snagged nylons, and marred shoes." On the way back to the reception area, I stopped at the supply closet and picked up items to replace those now missing from the desk. Then I took Coral's note to the secretary in the lobby. In presenting the note to the pleasant blonde, I glanced at the heading on the piece of paper and received another surprise. My assumption that Coral held the hiring manager position was way off base. Coral Stevens was the owner of the company. Pride for the women of the world bubbled up within me. Returning to my workstation, I decided that nothing would sway me from having anything other than glorious days from now on. Absolutely nothing. What a hectic fourth day! People had been coming in and out of the office non-stop since I arrived. To top it off, Coral left for lunch early and had not yet returned. She had an interview in 15 minutes. So where was she? I never ate my lunch, thinking she'd be back by now, and my stomach was growling something awful. I glanced at my wristwatch. 1 o'clock. If I hurried, I could gobble down my peanut butter and jelly sandwich before the next appointment arrived. Before I could, though, the phone rang. Oh, damn it. "Good afternoon. Employment opportunities for tomorrow. Riley speaking. How may I assist you today?"
"And this fucking farce of a marriage you have with your husband,"
the woman demanded in a low, muffled, menacing tone on the other end of the phone. It sounded like she held a cloth over the mouthpiece. "Excuse me?" My hunger was no doubt affecting my hearing. "I'm sorry, but I didn't quite get that."
"You heard me loud and clear. Your husband needs someone who can satisfy his needs in the bedroom, and your skills don't come close. Do us all a favor and end it."
She hung up. The receiver remained at my ear when the glass door of the office opened, and an energetic woman bounded in, all toothy in her unusual appearance. Full and thick chin-length, brown curly hair framed an attractive face with big, bright blue eyes. That was the normal part. The odd part was what she wore. A long-sleeved, red and white checkered blouse tucked inside a shin-length, A-lined, dark blue denim skirt. She almost said something, but seeing me on the phone, she pointed her thumb over her shoulder and sat on the green sofa. In a daze, I cradled the receiver on its base and sat motionless. Now that my call was over, the perky young woman grasped her red clutch purse with both hands and approached my desk. "Well, good day to you, ma'am." She spoke loud enough for those in the back of the office to hear her. Her accent was unquestionably Texan. I know because Sherman has relatives who live on a ranch outside the Dallas area, and she sounded just like them. With that said, I looked for cowboy boots and a saddled black stallion tied to the light pole outside, neither of which I saw. "Good afternoon," I replied. "You must be Hazel." The glowing look on her face would make one think I had just awarded her the blue ribbon for her peach pie in the Texas State Fair. "You are abso-bloomin' correct, and I'm here for my interview with Mrs. Stevens. Are you she?" Her made-up word was just as peculiar as she was, but at least she used correct grammar. No. My mind still reeled with the recent phone call. "She's not back from lunch yet." "That's all right. Shall I wait right here, or—" She pointed to the couch on which she previously sat. "Do you want me to wait over there?" I was not in the mood to have this howdy-doody yee-haw so close, but I attempted a smile. "Please make yourself comfortable on the sofa." A few minutes later, I saw Coral step out of the phone booth in the lobby. How curious. Why didn't she use her office phone to make a call? "Oh," I told Hazel, "Mrs. Stevens has arrived." When Coral stepped into the office, I introduced the two women. Coral whispered to me that she needed a few minutes to freshen up. "Hazel," I offered, "Mrs. Stevens will be right with you." "Okie dokie, Smoky," Hazel replied with far too much energy. I bet she had lunch and washed it down with a martini to get that over-the-top cheerfulness she exuded. After showing Hazel to Coral's office, I returned to my open briefcase, but the sandwich didn't seem appealing anymore. What I really needed was a comforting drink like a pink squirrel, with its almond liqueur, creme de cacao, and heavy cream. But all I had was a thermos of iced coffee. Why didn't I work in a bar, or at least have the forethought to have packed a bottle of Kahlua in my briefcase? Iced coffee and Kahlua would have done the trick. The workday could not end fast enough. Picking up my purse and searching through it for my car keys, the telephone rang. The wood and metal starburst wall clock showed 10 minutes after 5. Not wanting to get involved in another conversation, I ignored the rings and locked the glass door. Perhaps my husband would have a pink squirrel waiting for me when I got home.
"I called you at work this afternoon,"
my other half stated as soon as I set foot in the house.
"but there was no answer."
"Well, fine. No pink squirrel." After placing my purse and briefcase on the tufted rose-colored brocade settee, I pulled him into an embrace and squeezed until his body pressed into mine.
"Hey now,"
He held me close.
"are we competing who can give the strongest hug? Because if we are, I'll win."
I increased my hug, as did he, until I squealed, "Uncle!" Laughing, I kissed him. "So what did you want?"
"We need butter, and I was going to ask you to pick up a cube on your way home, but it's okay. We have enough for tonight."
My eyes lit up. "Are you cooking dinner?" His eyes twinkled at my humor.
"No, Riley.
Still holding me, he looked me in the eye.
That's your department."
He gently tapped me on the nose.
"I'm just reporting that we're almost out of butter."
"I'd gladly show you around my department, as you call it. You've been there before and have enjoyed using the features." He placed his arm lovingly around my shoulder and guided me into the kitchen. Once there, he stopped where the ingredients for the evening meal lay waiting for the department manager to make something out of them. "Will you at least help me?" I asked.
I always help you, sweetheart.
With his strong fingers caressing my shoulders, he nibbled my earlobe.
You cook,
He whispered.
and I keep you from burning things.
The heat of his breath dancing over my skin as he said burning things invoked a different meaning in my groin area. My expertise in the kitchen was less than stellar, and there was only one explanation for it. Before the stork bundled me up and whisked me away to earth, God dispersed necessities for me to survive. I received smarts, determination, a halfway decent body, and a strong will to outperform anyone. But I missed the meeting when God passed out skills in the culinary arts. How could I consider myself a perfectionist, which I did, when most of the time my focus was on keeping the house from burning down? Regrettably, there were no do-overs at the checkout line in the Celestial Distribution Center. Over dinner, I informed my sexy husband of the peculiar phone call I received from a woman who deliberately disguised the sound of her voice when making her vicious demand.
That's terrible,
He offered. I could have sworn his face paled a little at the onset of the topic, but surely I imagined such a thing.
It's obvious she had the wrong number,
Sherman firmly stated. He took a deep breath and then comforted me by covering my hand with his. His smile soothed any trepidations I had and quickened my heartbeat. After squeezing my hand, he focused on the piece of obviously overdone round steak on his plate. Though not burned, it had the consistency of leather. I knew this when taking it out of the frying pan. It didn't bend or move at all. It looked fake. That's what I thought too. I dabbed my mouth with a cloth napkin. I feel sorry for the intended target of that call. Some people have too many screws loose, you know. He nodded.
He
focused on his dinner plate.
This looks delicious, sweetheart,
He stated, trying to cut through the meat. Thank you. I followed the recipe to a T. No, I didn't. I just threw the meat in a pan and turned up the heat. The quicker I cooked it, the more tender it would be, right? After finally getting his knife through, he stabbed twice with his fork, then chewed and chewed. After a while, he discreetly spit the unswallowable chunk into his napkin, folded it, and placed it in his lap. However, covering his next few bites presented a problem. This wasn't a large napkin, and there was an awful lot of meat on his plate. His attempt at keeping his actions hidden failed miserably. Out of the corner of my eagle eye, I saw every spit and berry. Poor guy. He went through all that trouble just to keep from hurting my feelings. It happened so often I could recognize compassion when I saw it. I was the luckiest woman on earth to have such a thoughtful man.